Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Monday, February 16th, 2026. And I have to be honest with you, I spent most of the weekend staring at the ceiling, thinking about the sheer scale of the information we have on the docket today.
Yeah.
Usually we try to curate a nice, neat narrative for you. We try to say, here is the story of the week.
But this week, the story is that the universe is massive, ancient, and apparently incredibly messy.
Messy is absolutely the right word. We aren't just doing a news recap today. If you want the headlines, you can get those anywhere. Today, we are trying to connect some dots that span about, 4 billion years?
Give or take a few hundred million.
Right.
We are looking at a stack of sources that starts with the literal chemical origins of life inside asteroids.
Right.
Then it moves through the inevitable geological destruction of our current world map and lands squarely in the chaotic geopolitical landscape of 2026.
It's a bit of a whiplash. It really is. We're going from how did life begin to why did the Prime Minister of India invite the President of France to talk about robots?
And then straight to why was a Russian opposition leader allegedly killed with the poison of a South American frog?
It sounds like a conspiracy theory board when you put it like that.
I mean, it does, but these are the headlines. This is what's happening.
And that's the mission today. We are going to try to understand the fragility of the systems we live in, biological, geological, and, political. And we're going to do it without losing our minds.
Well, no promises on the losing our minds part. The science section alone is enough to induce a mild existential crisis.
Great. That's exactly what I need on a Monday. So let's dive in. I want to start with that popular mechanics piece because it fundamentally changes how I look at the night sky.
This is the asteroid research.
Right. We've grown up with this idea that life is this precious, unique thing that sparked on Earth in a warm little pond, as Darwin put it.
The primordial soup.
Yeah. But this research is suggesting the pond wasn't on Earth. It was hurtling through the vacuum of space.
That's the big shift. We're looking at data from NASA's OSIRIS-REx mission.
NASA is the National Aeronautics and Space Administration.
Right. And you remember when it returned those samples from the asteroid Bennu a few years back?
Oh, yeah, the grab-and-go mission. That was a nail-biter. It touched the surface, grabbed some dirt, or regolith, I guess is the term, and brought it home.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And for the last couple of years, scientists have been analyzing that material at a molecular level, and they aren't just finding dust. They are finding amino acids and nucleobases.
Okay, we need to be very specific about what that means, because I think people hear amino acids and their eyes just glaze over.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I think people hear protein shake or something.
Right, that's what I hear.
Well, think smaller. Much smaller. Amino acids are the Lego bricks of proteins. Without them, you don't have biology, period. And nucleobases, those are the letters of the genetic alphabet, the A, C, G, and T that make up DNA and RNA.
So, finding these inside a rock that has been frozen in space for 4.5 billion years is, it's a big deal.
It's problematic for the Earth-only theory of life. It really is.
But I have to play devil's advocate for a second here. Couldn't that just be contamination? The capsule lands in the Utah desert. Utah has life. Maybe a bacteria hitched a ride.
That is always the first question, and it's absolutely the right one to ask. Contamination is the nightmare scenario for these sample return missions.
So how do they rule it out?
The chemists account for that in a few ways, but the big one is they look at the chirality, or the handedness of the molecules.
Handedness.
Yeah. So many molecules, including amino acids, can exist in two forms that are mirror images of each other. Think of your left hand and your right hand. They're the same, but they're opposites. You can't superimpose them.
Okay.
Well, biology on Earth, for reasons we still don't fully understand, uses left-handed amino acids almost exclusively. It's just how our biology evolved.
I see. So if this sample was contaminated by Earth bacteria?
You'd expect to see a huge spike in just left-handed amino acids. But if you find a roughly equal mix of left-handed and right-handed molecules, what they call a racemic mixture, it strongly suggests they were created abiotically.
Without life.
Without life. In some chemical process in space, rather than by Earth bacteria. And that's what they are seeing in the Bennu samples.
So these rocks are essentially chemical factories.
Yeah.
Just cooking up the ingredients for life over billions of years.
That's the new model. I've heard it called the cosmic pressure cooker hypothesis. The idea is that inside these asteroids, you have radioactive elements that provide heat, you have water ice melting, and you have this slurry of basic chemicals cooking over millions and millions of years. It's not just a rock, it's a laboratory.
Which leads directly to the concept of panspermia.
Seeds everywhere. It's the hypothesis that the raw materials for life, or maybe even simple life itself, were delivered to Earth via a constant bombardment of asteroids and comets.
It's just so incredibly ironic, isn't it? We always talk about asteroids as the destroyers.
Right, the extinction level event.
Exactly. The Chicxulub impactor wipes out the dinosaurs, ends an entire era. But you're saying the same delivery system might have started the whole game.
It's the ultimate duality. The Popular Mechanics article actually points out that without the late heavy bombardment period early in Earth's history, the planet might have been too sterile to get going. And without the later impacts to clear the board, like the dinosaur killer mammals never would have had a chance to rise.
Oh, you know, quite literally the children of collisions.
That's a good way to put it. We owe our existence to cosmic debris.
That makes me feel very small, but also strangely connected to everything floating out there.
You should feel connected. You're made of the same stuff, literally stardust.
Speaking of stuff floating out there, we have to talk about V404 Cygni.
Ah, the waking giant.
That sounds like the title of a horror movie. The Black Hole Awakens. I mean, what is happening there?
It is a bit spooky. V404 Cygni is a black hole system about 700-800 light years away, so it's in our galactic neighborhood, relatively speaking. And for a long time, astronomers classified it as dormant.
Meaning what? Just quiet?
Yeah, quiet. It wasn't really interacting much with its environment. It was just sitting there. But now it's feeding.
Okay, stop. Feeding. When a black hole feeds, it's not like it's ordering a pizza. What does that actually look like physically? What are our telescopes seeing?
Well, it has a companion star, a regular sun-like star orbiting it, and V404 Cygni's gravity has started to strip the outer layers of gas off that star.
So it's literally pulling its neighbor apart.
Bit by bit. And this material doesn't just fall in a straight line, it spirals in, like water going down a drain. That spiral of superheated gas is called an accretion disk.
And that disk gets hot.
Unimaginably hot. Millions of degrees. As the gas spirals in faster and faster, friction and gravitational forces heat it up until it glows brightly in X-rays.
So that's the flare. That's the signal.
That's the signal our telescopes are picking up. This sudden, intense flare of high-energy X-rays telling us it's eating.
Why does this matter to us other than being a cool, if terrifying, light show?
It challenges our sense of timescale. We tend to think of black holes as these eternal, static monsters at the end of their lives. But they have metabolisms, in a sense. They have cycles of feast and famine that can last for thousands of years.
So understanding why V404 Cygni woke up now helps us understand the life cycle of galaxies.
Exactly. I mean, is the supermassive black hole at the center of our own Milky Way, Sagittarius A star, going to wake up and eat something soon?
Is it? Please tell me it isn't.
Probably not soon. Sagittarius A star seems to be on a diet right now. But V404 Cygni is a reminder that the universe is dynamic. Things change constantly.
Speaking of change, and keeping with the space theme for just one more second, Mira A, the Valentine star.
This was just a beautiful bit of cosmic coincidence, wasn't it?
It really was. So Mira A is a variable star that is dying. It's shedding its outer layers.
Right. It's in its red giant phase.
Yeah.
And it blew off about 10,000 Earth masses worth of material.
Stop and think about that number.
Huh.
10,000 Earths.
Yeah.
Just gone, ejected into space.
Ejected. And because of the way it's moving through space and interacting with its companion star, the gas formed this huge, long tail. And from our perspective, near the star, it had a shape that looked like a heart.
A cosmic Valentine.
A very fleeting one. But it highlights the recycling process that powers the universe. That material, those 10,000 Earths of gas, is rich with carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, all the heavy elements forged inside the star.
And that's the stuff that will eventually coalesce into new solar systems, new planets.
And maybe new life. The death of one star is the seed for the next.
So to recap the cosmic section, asteroids bring the ingredients for life. Black holes eat stars. Dying stars spit out the ingredients for new stars. It's a very efficient system.
It is. Nature wastes absolutely nothing.
Which brings us back home to Earth. Because nature might be efficient, but it's also brutal. And according to the geological models in our stack today, the future of our map is, well, it's going to get ugly.
Pangea Proxy.
Pangea. I remember that from school. All the continents mashed together into one big landmass. Dinosaurs roaming from what is now Africa to South America without getting their feet wet.
Right. That was the last supercontinent about 300 million years ago. Pangea Proxima is the next
The
one.
prediction is 200 million years from now.
Roughly, yes. Plate tectonics are moving at about the speed your fingernails grow, but over geological time, it adds up. The Atlantic will close, and the Americas will collide with Afro-Eurasia.
Why do the scientists think this is such bad news? I mean, sure, the commute from New York to London becomes a drive, but why is it an extinction event?
It comes down to something called the continentality effect.
Okay, break that down for me.
Think about the ocean. Water has a very high specific heat capacity. It takes a lot of energy to heat it up or cool it down. That moderates the climate. If you live near the coast, your temperature swings are relatively mild, right?
Okay, that makes sense. San Francisco versus, say, Kansas City.
Exactly. Land, on the other hand, heats up and cools down very, very fast. When you smash all the continents together into one supercontinent, the interior of that landmass is thousands of miles away from the moderating influence of any ocean.
So the center just becomes a furnace.
A hyper-arid, scorching furnace. The models suggest that average temperatures in the interior could regularly exceed 40 or 50 degrees Celsius. That's up to 122 Fahrenheit for months on end.
Wow.
But the real killer isn't just the dry heat, it's the humidity near the new coastlines.
The wet bulb temperature. We've talked about this before.
Exactly. It's the point where the air is so hot and so saturated with moisture that sweat can't evaporate. And mammals, including humans, cool down by sweating. It's our only trick.
So if you can't sweat, you can't cool down.
Your core body temperature rises, your proteins start to denature, you literally cook from the inside out.
So a supercontinent basically eliminates the habitable zone for most mammals.
For most mammals, yes. We are currently in a geological Goldilocks period. The continents are spread out, we have lots of coastline, we have complex ocean currents distributing heat around the globe. Pangaea Proxima destroys that balance.
Well, we have 200 million years to figure out global air conditioning or maybe move to Mars. But it really highlights that the Earth itself isn't the static stage we stand on. It's a machine that is constantly grinding.
And sometimes the working parts of that machine are incredibly surprising, like the whales.
I have to admit, when I saw whale urine in the source list for today, I thought, okay, the researchers are just getting bored.
It does sound ridiculous, doesn't it? But it's genuinely vital science.
Okay, explain the whale pump to me.
Okay, so the ocean is stratified. It has layers. And gravity pulls nutrients, things like dead plankton, fish poop, decaying matter down to the bottom, to the deep ocean.
Right.
So the deep ocean is incredibly nutrient-rich, but it's also pitch black, so nothing can grow there because there's no sunlight for photosynthesis.
And the surface.
The surface has all the light it needs, but it quickly runs out of nutrients because everything keeps sinking. It becomes a biological desert in some parts of the ocean.
Enter the whale.
The biological elevator,
Yeah.
exactly. Whales, especially the great whales, dive deep to feed on squid or krill way down in the nutrient-rich dark. They absorb those nutrients into their bodies.
Okay.
Then they have to come to the surface to breathe, and while they are up there in the sunlit zone, they poop and they pee.
Releasing these massive plumes of nitrogen and iron and phosphorus right where the phytoplankton need it most.
Exactly. They are mechanically pumping essential nutrients from the deep against the force of gravity back to the photic zone where the phytoplankton live. And remember, those phytoplankton form the base of the entire marine food web, and they produce half the oxygen we breathe.
So if you kill the whales, you break the pump.
You stall the engine of the ocean. The nutrients stay trapped at the bottom. The surface becomes less productive. This study implies that the recovery of whale populations isn't just a nice conservation story. It's essential for the chemical balance of the entire planet.
It's amazing how everything is infrastructure. The whales are infrastructure. The asteroids were delivery trucks.
It's all connected systems, intricate and often invisible.
Let's pivot from biological systems to digital ones. Because the infrastructure of the future is being built right now, and apparently a lot of the planning is happening in New Delhi.
This is a major signal, the India AI Impact Summit.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated it today. But look at the guest list. This isn't just a local tech conference. You've got French President Emmanuel Macron, Brazilian President Lula da Silva, and the CEOs of Google, Microsoft, and OpenAI.
This isn't a tech trade show. This is high-level geopolitics using technology as the medium.
Why India? Why now? What's the play here?
India is making a very specific and very clever play. They know they might not have the raw supercomputing power of the US or the top-down state control of China, but they have one thing in spades. Population. Scale.
So they're positioning themselves as the test bed for AI at scale.
Exactly. They're asking the question, If you can build an AI system that effectively delivers healthcare diagnostics or personalized educational tools to 1.4 billion people, many of whom are in rural areas with spotty connectivity and speak hundreds of different languages, you have solved the scalability problem for the entire global South.
It's the digital public infrastructure model they've been pushing with their payment systems and digital ID.
Right. And having Macron and Lula there signals that Europe and Latin America are very interested in this third way for AI governance.
The third way.
It's not just the American move fast and break things, innovation at all costs model, and it's not the Chinese authoritarian surveillance model.
Yeah.
It's a state-guided developmental model for AI focused on public services.
But there is a huge tension there, isn't there? The source material mentions the constant debate between innovation and guardrails.
That is the eternal struggle in tech right now, and we're seeing it play out not just between nations, but in the corporate world, too. I mean, did you see the fallout from the Super Bowl ads?
The AI wars. This is Anthropic versus OpenAI.
It's fascinating branding. Anthropic ran that ad for Claude, their chatbot. And the whole ad was mocking the sheer ubiquity and, frankly, the creepiness of most AI advertising.
It was very meta. Here's an AI ad making fun of how annoying AI ads are.
And it worked. The Claude app reportedly shot into the top 10 on the App Store right after, but then you have Sam Altman from OpenAI coming out and calling the ad funny yet misleading.
It really feels like the Coke versus Pepsi ads from the 80s and 90s.
It is, but the stakes are so much higher. They are fighting for the public narrative. OpenAI is the default. They're like the Kleenex or Google of AI. Anthropic is trying to position itself as the conscientious alternative, the safe AI.
Which brings us to safety, because the UK government is not laughing at AI ads right now. They are cracking down and cracking down hard.
This is the whole Grok situation.
Elon Musk's AI.
Right. It's been embroiled in this scandal over generating non-consensual deepfake images. Highly explicit, sexualized content involving real people, often celebrities. It's been a huge uproar.
And the UK government, under Prime Minister Keir Starmer, is invoking the new Online Safety Act.
Yes. And this is a really big test for that law.
How does that actually work? Because usually tech companies have that safe harbor. They say, hey, we just built the tool. We aren't responsible for what the user does with it.
The Online Safety Act fundamentally changes that liability shield in the UK. It basically says if your tool is capable of generating illegal content and you didn't put in reasonable, robust safeguards to prevent that, the company itself is liable, not just the user who made the prompt.
That is a massive legal shift. That's huge.
It forces the engineers to build safety by design. You can't just release a raw, unfiltered model and then hope for the best. You are on the hook.
And we're seeing this legal pressure bubble up everywhere. ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, just got slapped down by Disney.
The Cedence app.
Their AI video generator. People were making AI videos of Spider-Man and Elsa from Frozen.
Oh, Spider-Man, Elsa, Mickey Mouse, you name it. And Disney. Well, you don't mess with the mouse's intellectual property.
Oh, absolutely not. Disney lawyers are the special forces of copyright law. You just don't do that.
And ByteDance folded almost immediately. They curbed the app's functionality. So we are seeing the boundaries of AI being drawn in real time right before our eyes. Governments are drawing a line at safety and illegal content, and corporations are drawing a hard line at intellectual property.
It's a messy process, but it's probably necessary. However, I want to look at the other side of the coin. Because for all the deepfakes and lawsuits and corporate spats, the tech stack today also has some genuine miracles in it.
The medical breakthroughs.
Let's start with you, Vezi. The eye drops. As someone who's slowly realizing my arms aren't long enough to read a menu anymore, this one spoke to me on a personal level.
Presbyopia. It's the age-related hardening of the lens in your eye. We all get it eventually. We lose the ability to focus up close.
And usually, the fix is reading glasses, which I am desperately trying to avoid.
Yeah.
But these drops...
It's a really clever chemical hack. The FDA, the Food and Drug Administration in the U.S., just approved them. They contain a mix of two drugs, carbachol and bromonidine tartrate.
And what do those do?
They induce a state called meiosis. They constrict your pupil, making it smaller.
Like looking through a pinhole camera. I remember doing that in science class. It makes things sharper.
That's exactly the principle. If you make the aperture of any lens smaller, you increase the depth of field. Objects that are close up become sharper without the lens itself having to change shape.
So it's a workaround for the stiff lens. Is there a trade-off? There's always a trade-off.
Well, a smaller pupil lets in less light, so you might struggle a bit more reading that menu in a dimly lit restaurant. But for millions of people, it could mean ditching the readers for 6 to 10 hours a day.
That's a huge quality of life improvement. But the bigger story, the one that feels like science fiction, is the spinal cord.
This is profound. I mean, truly profound. Scientists have successfully grown a mini human spinal cord in the lab.
How is that even possible?
They use what are called induced pluripotent stem cells. Basically, they can take an adult cell, like a skin cell, and reprogram it back into a blank slate stem cell. Then they use a cocktail of chemical signals to guide those cells to differentiate into all the various types of spinal tissue.
Why is this different from, say, growing a patch of skin in a lab?
Because the spinal cord is incredibly complex. It's not just one type of cell. It's a specific, intricate architecture of different neurons and glial cells that have to connect in just the right way. Growing a model that mimics that real structure allows them to test drugs for neurodegenerative diseases or spinal injuries without risking a human patient.
And the dream, I assume, is to one day graft lab-grown tissue to repair a paralyzed spine.
That is the ultimate goal. We have a long way from that, but this is a critical first step.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
From fixing eyes to fixing spines and fixing dating. Date drop.
This Stanford grad student claims he has beaten the Tinder algorithm.
That's a bold claim.
A very bold claim. He says he's done it by mostly ignoring photos. The claim is that his startup is using behavioral algorithms.
So instead of just, do you like this face, swipe left or right, it's analyzing how you interact, what you say in your profile, your pacing, your sense of humor.
And he claims a 10 times higher conversion rate from a match to an actual first date.
That's the claim. It suggests that we are actually terrible at picking our own partners based on a few static photos, but our behavior, our language, reveals who we actually have chemistry with. It's AI playing matchmaker, but using data we didn't even realize we were broadcasting, which is both incredibly helpful and slightly dystopian at the same time.
That's the theme of the day, isn't it? Helpful and dystopian.
It really is. Okay, let's step back in time. We've looked at the far future and the immediate present. Let's look at the deep past. Archaeology is having a real moment, and it's mostly thanks to technology.
LiDAR is the hero again. It really is changing the entire field.
And this time it's in Romania.
The Hidden Fortress, they're calling it, in Niangye County. A local history teacher and one of his former students were systematically scanning the forests in their area.
For those who don't know, can you explain what LiDAR is again?
Sure. It stands for light detection and ranging. You fly a drone or small plane over a forest. It shoots millions of laser pulses down at the ground every second. Some of those pulses hit the leaves on the trees and bounce back, but some slip through the tiny gaps in the canopy and hit the actual ground.
And the computer can tell the difference.
Exactly. By filtering out all the laser returns that hit the trees and just keeping the ones that hit the ground, you can digitally strip away the entire forest and see the bare earth underneath.
Revealing the faint bumps and ridges of old walls and foundations that are completely invisible to the naked eye.
And that's how they found it. A 5,000-year-old fortress, completely hidden by the trees. This puts it in the Copper Age.
So who were these people? What does a fortress from that long ago tell us?
It likely belonged to a culture that was transitioning from a nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle to a sedentary agricultural one. When you build a fortress, it means you have something you need to protect. You have grain stores, you have domesticated cattle, you have territory you've claimed.
The birth of the concept of property.
And the birth of organized defensive warfare. It's a major turning point in human society.
But the find that really got me this week, the one that felt so personal, was the boat in Denmark.
The short spring boat.
2,400 years old. It's the oldest plank-constructed boat ever found in Scandinavia. But it's not the boat itself that's the news. It's the smudge.
A single fingerprint left in the tree tar that was used to seal the planks and make the boat waterproof.
There's something so incredibly intimate and human about that. We talked about the Iron Age people as this abstract concept, but this was a guy, a person. He had a job. He was sealing a boat. He probably wiped his brow, touched the sticky tar by accident, press it into the wood.
And that one simple human moment is frozen in time for 2.5 millennia. It's astonishing.
But scientifically, it's also a data point, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The chemical analysis of the tar and the context of the fingerprint suggests strong links to the Baltic region.
So these weren't isolated communities.
Not at all. They were deeply connected. There were extensive networks of trade, craftsmanship, and likely raiding and warfare all across the sea. The ancient world was much smaller and more interconnected than we often imagine.
And from an ancient boat to an ancient city, Pompeii.
The gift that just keeps on giving to archaeologists.
Virgin frescoes found in a suburb of the city. Now, we have to be careful here with the terminology. The eruption was in 79 AD. The word virgin usually makes us think of something Christian.
Right, and that would be, well, extremely unlikely for Pompeii in 79 AD. At that point, Christianity was a tiny, obscure, underground sect, mostly in the Levant.
So what are we actually looking at here? What does virgin mean in this context?
It likely means virgin in the classical sense of maiden figures from Roman mythology, perhaps frescoes related to the cult of Vesta, the virgin goddess of the hearth, or Diana, the virgin goddess of the hunt. Or it could be a later interpretation by the excavators of what they see as Marian-like, devotion-pious female figures that existed in pagan forms long before Christianity co-opted that imagery.
Syncretism. One religion's ideas blending into another's.
Exactly. But the location is also significant, the suburbs. We usually focus on the dense city center. This discovery shows that the wealthy elite were building these massive, lavishly decorated villas on the outskirts.
It was the ancient Roman version of white flight, or suburban sprawl, getting away from the noise and the crowds.
The more things change,
The more they stay the same. It's always true.
Yep.
Okay, let's talk about the planet right now, in 2026. Because Section 4 of our outline is looking rough. The weather maps are lit up like a Christmas tree all over the world.
It's a chaotic system today. It really is. But at the same time, we are getting much better at tracking it.
You're talking about the atomic fingerprints.
This is the isotope study. It's fascinating.
Explain this. How does a drop of water have a fingerprint?
Well, water is H2O, right? But not all hydrogen and oxygen atoms are the same weight. Some are slightly heavier because they have extra neutrons. These are called heavy isotopes, like deuterium for hydrogen or oxygen-18.
Okay, so some water is literally heavier than other water.
At a molecular level, yes. And this is the key. When water evaporates from the ocean, the lighter normal water molecules fly off more easily. When it's time to rain, the heavier ones fall out of the clouds first. This process is called fractionation.
Ah,
So by measuring the ratio of heavy to light isotopes in a sample of rain or snow, scientists can tell you with incredible precision where that moisture originally came from. Did it evaporate from the tropical Pacific, the North Atlantic? How long did it spend traveling in the clouds?
it's like a passport stamp for every raindrop.
Precisely. And this data is absolutely crucial for refining our global climate models. If we know how the water is actually moving around the planet, we can make much better predictions about who is going to get droughts and who is going to get floods.
Which we desperately need. Because look at the glaciers.
The Glacier Rescue Mission. This is a major collaboration between climate scientists and professional mountaineers.
Because the projection is that half of the world's glaciers could be gone by the year 2100.
That's the median projection. And we need to remember, glaciers aren't just pretty ice on mountains. They are the world's water towers. They store fresh water in the form of snow and ice in the wet season, and then release it as meltwater in the dry season.
So they regulate river flows.
They regulate the biggest river systems in the world, in Asia, in Europe, in the Americas. If they vanish, those rivers become dangerously seasonal. You get catastrophic floods in the spring, and then bone-dry droughts in the summer. It's a food security issue for billions of people.
It's a civilization-level survival issue.
It really is.
And right now, we are seeing the extremes of that water cycle playing out. Cyclone Jazani?
Hitting Madagascar and Mozambique in southeastern Africa.
Madagascar just took a direct hit. The reports say at least 45 confirmed dead. The port city of Tolmasina is reportedly wrecked.
And in Mozambique, 13,000 people are without power. And you have to remember, Mozambique is still trying to recover from the last major cyclone. This is the compound disaster effect we always talk about. Developing nations don't get the recovery time they need before the next hammer drops.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, on the west coast of the U.S. California,
The atmospheric river. The Pineapple Express.
I feel like we only learned that term 5 or 10 years ago, and now we use it every single winter.
It's a narrow, intense fire hose of moisture from the tropics pointed right at the coast. They are predicting up to 8 feet of snow in the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Which I guess is good for the long-term drought, right?
Mhm.
Fills up the snowpack.
Long-term, yes. A huge deposit in the water bank. Short-term, it's a disaster. Major highways are closed. There's a high risk of avalanches. Power lines are down. It's too much water, too fast.
And in the UK, it's the opposite problem. Too much rain, not enough snow, just floods. A man died in Derbyshire fleeing police. He entered the floodwater.
It's a tragic story, but it highlights how deceptive and dangerous floodwater is. People think, oh, I can swim, or it's not that deep. But even a few inches of fast-moving water can knock you off your feet, and cars get swept away in just a foot or two.
And just to add a bizarre new twist to the climate chaos, kudzu.
The vine that ate the South, that invasive plant from Asia.
It's fueling wildfires now. How?
This is a really nasty feedback loop. First, kudzu grows over everything and smothers native trees, killing them and creating a lot of dead, dry wood. Then the vine itself dries out in the winter and creates these dense, flammable mats.
So it acts like a ladder for the fire.
A perfect ladder fuel. It allows a low-intensity ground fire to quickly climb up into the forest canopy, turning it into a much more destructive crown fire. It's a perfect storm of an invasive species meeting climate change-driven wildfires.
A deadly combination.
A very deadly combination.
All right, let's take a deep breath. We need to talk about what is probably the hardest part of the stack, geopolitics.
The Munich Security Conference.
This is usually a pretty polite state affair, diplomats in suits, drinking coffee and talking about policy papers. But this year, the tone was dark.
Stark is the word that was used in several reports.
And it was led by the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz. He stood up and said, and this is the direct quote, "The world's rules-based order no longer exists."
That is a seismic statement coming from the leader of Germany. Just seismic.
What does he even mean by the rules-based order? What is he referring to?
He means the entire post-World War II architecture. The United Nations, the World Trade Organization, the idea that national borders are inviolable, that trade is generally open, that you don't just invade your neighbor to take their land.
And he's saying it's gone.
He's looking at the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, at the war in Gaza, at the civil war in Sudan, and he's saying the rule book is gone. It's back to raw power politics, great power competition.
And he's calling for a new transatlantic partnership. But he's saying this to a U.S. delegation that, well, let's be honest, is a bit unpredictable right now under the Trump administration.
Right. You had the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio there, and his job was basically damage control. He was trying to reassure the Europeans that the U.S. is still committed to NATO, still committed to European security, but the America First policy creates a lot of anxiety in Berlin and Paris.
They don't know if the phone will be answered in a crisis, if Article 5 will be honored.
Exactly. And that uncertainty, that vacuum, leads to escalation. Look at Denmark and Finland.
They aren't waiting for permission from the U.S. anymore.
No. They are now publicly backing long-range strikes for Ukraine deep into Russian territory. They are essentially saying, if the old rules are broken, then we have to take the gloves off and create new rules of deterrence.
And speaking of taking the gloves off, the Navalny revelation.
This is, I think, the most chilling story of the week, by far.
We knew that the Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny died in that Arctic prison colony, but the UK Foreign Office is now publicly claiming they have intelligence that he was killed with epibetadine.
A potent toxin found in the skin of certain Ecuadorian dart frogs.
Why? Why would they use that? We know Russia has Novichok, the nerve agent. That's been their signature assassination tool. Why a frog poison?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question that intelligence agencies are asking right now. Novichok screams, Russian state lab, it leaves a calling card. A dart frog toxin is exotic, bizarre, harder to trace.
So is it an attempt to hide their involvement, to create plausible deniability?
That could be one theory. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's a message. We are so powerful, we can touch you with anything, anywhere. Or maybe it's just a sign of chaos in their system. That was what was available. But it shifts the narrative. It's not just state-developed chemical weapons anymore. It's exotic biological toxin.
It's terrifying. And the conflicts themselves are just grinding on with no end in sight.
Ukraine. The reports say Russia is taking more small settlements in the Kharkiv region. The lines are moving, slowly but surely. And there were trilateral talks in Geneva, the U.S., Russia, and Ukraine. But pointedly, no EU participation.
The Europeans were cut out of the talks about a war on their own continent.
That's what it looks like. Which just reinforces Chancellor Merz's fear that Europe is becoming a spectator in its own security.
And Gaza. Continued airstrikes, 11 more Palestinians reported killed today. And the sharp criticism of President Trump's Board of Peace initiative.
It's being widely criticized, particularly in the Arab world, for lacking any Palestinian representation. The consensus is you can't negotiate a peace deal if one of the primary belligerents isn't even in the room. It's seen as a non-starter.
And Sudan. We cannot forget what is happening in Sudan.
In El Fasher. The UN is now explicitly accusing the paramilitary group, the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, of war crimes. Mass killings, systematic sexual violence used as a weapon of war. It is a genocide happening in slow motion, and the world is largely looking away.
Why? Why is it not front-page news every day?
Because it's complex, it's remote, and frankly, there's crisis fatigue. With the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, the world's attention and diplomatic bandwidth is almost completely saturated.
And the Democratic Republic of Congo. The U.S. is now openly blaming the M23 rebels and their backers in Rwanda for the escalating violence.
Again, another regional war that is becoming a proxy war for larger powers.
It really feels like the Ring of Fire theory from a few years ago. Every potential flashpoint on the globe is flashing at once.
And the superpowers are just poking each other directly. I mean, the CIA releasing a recruitment video aimed at Chinese military officers.
On social media. It was basically, are you disenchanted with the Chinese Communist Party? Give us a call.
That is an incredibly bold, incredibly aggressive move. And China, of course, is vowing countermeasures. This is open espionage warfare, not even in the shadows anymore.
And here in the Americas, Venezuela.
President Maduro is digging in. His legitimacy was reaffirmed by his vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, but the U.S. is tightening the screws by seizing oil tankers.
The Veronica Third.
Seized in the Indian Ocean. It shows that the U.S. sanctions enforcement is global. The U.S. Navy is still the ultimate arbiter of who gets to participate in maritime trade.
And finally, back to domestic U.S. policy, the EPA.
The Environmental Protection Agency. This is a major rollback. The Trump administration has officially ended the Obama-era tailpipe emissions limits for cars and trucks,
which were the absolute cornerstone of the previous administration's strategy to push the auto industry towards electric vehicles.
Right. It's a huge signal that the U.S. is pivoting its industrial policy back towards the internal combustion engine and fossil fuels, which, again, puts the U.S. directly at odds with the European Green Deal and all of the climate science we just discussed.
It's a world of contradictions. We're launching missions to rescue glaciers with one hand and rolling back emissions limits with the other.
That is the paradox of 2026 in a nutshell.
All right. That was heavy. We need to land this plane. Let's talk about something else. Society. Sports. Anything.
The Winter Olympics. Milan Cortina 2026 is underway.
And Team GB from Great Britain is actually winning things on snow and ice? This is unusual.
Matt Weston and Tabitha Stoker, they won gold in the mixed team skeleton event.
Mixed skeleton sounds absolutely terrifying. Is that two people on one of those tiny sleds?
No, it's a team event. They add up the times of one male and one female rider. But Weston has now won 2 golds in these games. He is the king of the ice shoot.
But I heard there was some drama in curling. Of course there was.
There's always drama in curling. It was Canada versus Sweden, the clash of the titans.
So what happened?
There were allegations of double touching a stone.
What on earth is that?
In curling, you sweep the ice in front of the stone to melt it slightly, which reduces friction and helps it travel farther and curl less. If your broom accidentally touches the moving stone, even a micro touch, it's a foul. You've burned the stone. The Swedes accused the Canadians. Words were exchanged. There was apparently swearing on the ice.
I love it. The sheer, quiet tension of the broom. But there was a darker controversy at the games, too, wasn't there?
Yes, the helmet ban. This involved Vladislav Hraskovich. He's the Ukrainian skeleton racer.
And he wanted to wear a helmet with artwork on it depicting war dead from the conflict in his country.
That's right. And the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, banned it. They disqualified him from a race for wearing it.
Citing the Rule 50, the rule against political demonstrations.
Exactly, but it raises that really difficult question. Is honoring the dead from a war political when your country is actively being invaded? The IOC says, yes, all messages are banned. Hraskovich says it's simply his reality. It's a harsh reminder that sport is never really separate from the world.
And then we have the story that just refuses to die. The Epstein files.
The slow, agonizing drip of accountability. Or at least consequences.
A new big name. Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, the head of the massive Dubai ports giant, DP World, he's resigned.
Emails surfaced linking him to the Epstein network. It's that guilt by association, or in some cases direct participation, that is forcing these figures out of public life.
And Prince Andrew is back in the news.
Thames Valley Police in the UK are now investigating allegations that he leaked confidential government information to Jeffrey Epstein.
That completely flips the script. We always thought Epstein was the one holding all the information, all the cards.
It suggests it was a mutual exchange of influence and information. It just gets uglier and uglier.
And on the crime front,
yeah,
a major break in the Nancy Guthrie case.
After all this time, The FBI found a glove near her home, and the DNA on it was a match to the suspect they had on that video footage. It shows that forensic science, just like the LiDAR in Romania, just like the isotopes in the water, eventually catches up.
And the Bondi Beach attack in Australia. The suspect, a 24-year-old, is facing court on 15 counts of murder. Just an unbelievable tragedy.
Absolutely senseless.
Okay, give me the weird one. I need the weird one to end on.
Logan Paul.
Oh, no. What did he do now?
He sold a Pokemon card.
Okay, for how much?
$16 million.
I'm sorry, what?
16 million US dollars.
For a piece of cardboard with a cartoon on it.
A very rare piece of cardboard. The Pikachu Illustrator card, I believe.
Huh?
There are only a handful known to exist.
We have glaciers melting, we have wars raging, we have the global order collapsing, and someone spent the GDP of a small island nation on a Pikachu card.
That is the human experience in 2026 in a nutshell. The profound and the profane side by side.
Okay, let's try to put a bow on this. Let's synthesize. We have covered a lot of ground, from asteroid soup to dart frog poison, from the heat death of mammals in 200 million years to the high-stakes heat of a curling match.
What stands out to me is the theme of hidden architectures.
Say more about that.
We talked about the hidden chemicals inside asteroids that built life, the hidden pump of nutrients that whales move from the deep ocean to the surface, the hidden 5,000-year-old fortress under the Romanian forest, the hidden atomic fingerprints of water isotopes that circle the globe.
And the hidden rules of geopolitics, or, as Chancellor Merz would say, the lack thereof.
Exactly. We are coming to realize that the world is run by these vast, often invisible systems: gravity, chemistry, international treaties, financial flows, algorithms.
And they're all incredibly fragile.
They are. The geological Goldilocks zone that allows us to live is fragile. The rules-based order that kept a semblance of peace is fragile.
But there is resilience in there too, right? The guy who left his fingerprint on that boat 2,400 years ago, he didn't know we'd be talking about him today.
Yeah.
He built a boat, he connected his community with their neighbors, he did the work.
And we are still building boats. They just look like spaceships or AI models or new medicines now.
Here's my final thought for you to chew on. We are rushing to regulate artificial intelligence in the UK and India because we are scared of what a non-human digital intelligence might do to us.
It's a valid fear.
But at the same time, we're seeing plain old biological intelligence, frog poison, viruses, nerve agents being actively weaponized. Are we spending all our time worrying about the wrong threat? Or are they both just different tools in the same messy human drama of power and control?
I think the 5,000-year-old fortress answers that question. We've always been afraid of the other. We've always built walls to protect what's ours. But we've also always looked at the stars and wondered where we came from.
And on that note, keep looking up. But maybe watch out for the falling rocks.
That's always good advice.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll be back tomorrow, assuming the world is still here.
It probably will be.
See you then.
For enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
Welcome to the debate. If you were listening to the speeches coming out of Munich this week, you didn't just hear political posturing. You heard the sound of the world cracking open. We're in mid-February 2026, and the diplomatic pleasantries are, well, they're officially dead. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz stood up at the security conference and didn't just warn us. He basically read the eulogy. He said quite plainly that the world's rules-based order simply no longer exists.
It was a chilling moment. I mean, Merz wasn't just observing a trend, he was capitulating to it. For anyone who believes in the architecture we built after 1945, the UN, the Geneva Conventions, the very idea that law should supersede raw power, this week felt like watching the safety net being set on fire while the fire brigade just shrugged.
And this is where we have to be honest, Merz is finally admitting what the rest of us have known for a decade. So the central question we're debating today is this: is the dissolution of these 20th century norms a catastrophic failure leading us into global anarchy? Or is it a necessary, albeit painful, correction toward a more honest, real politic that actually fits the multipolar world we live in? I'm arguing that the old order was a hallucination that no longer serves reality. This shift toward national sovereignty, toward bilateral deal-making, even if it's messy, is the only way to stabilize global markets and security.
And I'm taking the opposing view. I argue that this fragmentation represents a dangerous vacuum of moral and political leadership. When you tear down the rules, you don't get honest realism. You get the law of the jungle. You get a world where hegemonic states and, frankly, unchecked corporations devour the vulnerable, from the civilians in Ukraine and Sudan all the way to the climate itself. We aren't seeing a correction. We're seeing a regression to a time where might makes right.
Then let's look at the evidence, because the might makes right argument, it usually ignores the fact that the old rules just weren't working. Look at the immediate reaction to the U.S. stance in Munich. There was this palpable anxiety in the European press, this clutching of pearls because the United States is recalibrating. But what did U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio actually say? Despite all the panic, he argued that the U.S. and Europe belong together. He wasn't dissolving the alliance, he was calling for a reset based on reality, not on nostalgia.
A reset? Come on, that's a very polite euphemism for abandonment.
It's a reset based on capacity. And notice how the markets are responding to this new clarity. The U.S. economy, you see inflation cooling to 2.4% as of January. The S&P 500 bounced back. Now why? Because capital hates uncertainty. The rules-based order has become a source of uncertainty because no one enforces the rules anymore. When a nation-state acts ruthlessly in its own interest, providing clear guidelines on trade and defense, that is a variable the market can actually price in. Nostalgia for 90s diplomacy isn't a strategy. It's a liability.
You know, I find it fascinating that you equate market confidence with global stability. The stock market doing well because it anticipates deregulation or maybe military spending does not mean the world is safer. It just means the wealthy are hedging effectively. You talk about clarity, but let's look at the political cost of this so-called reset. We are seeing a world where decisions are made by the powerful for the powerful, and the rest of the planet is treated like collateral damage. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres went to the African Union Summit in Addis Ababa this week and said it explicitly. We're operating with 1946 structures in 2026.
He's arguing for reform. That's my point. The structures are obsolete.
No, he is arguing that the current system is creating systemic injustice, not that we should just abandon the system for anarchy. Without binding rules, you get what we saw this week in the Middle East. The Israeli Security Cabinet approved a major land grab in the West Bank, registering it as state property. At the very same time, the U.S. is pushing a board of peace for Gaza that excludes Palestinians entirely. That isn't realism, that is erasure.
But what's the alternative? You want a UN resolution to stop that? The UN has been paralyzed on that issue for 60 years. What I'm pointing to is effectiveness versus performative outrage. Look at Venezuela. While the international community issued statements for years, the National Assembly there just passed the first articles of an amnesty law. That is a direct national political solution to resolve an internal conflict. It's messy, yes, but it's action. It's a sovereign nation solving its own problems.
Solving is a very strong word when we're talking about amnesty laws that often serve to protect perpetrators as much as they heal society. But let's stick to this idea of national solutions, because it brings us to the most glaring example of your realpolitik feeling, the transatlantic rift. You mentioned the U.S. and Russia engaging in direct trilateral talks regarding Ukraine.
Correct. Great powers negotiating the end of a conflict. That is how wars have historically ended.
But who is missing from that room? It's the Europeans. Specifically, the Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski is practically begging for a seat at the table in Geneva. He made the point that Europe has contributed 200 billion euros to Ukraine's defense. They're paying the bills, they're hosting the refugees, and yet the US and Russia are negotiating the future security architecture of Europe right over their heads. This is the Polish exclusion, and it's terrifying for our allies. It sends the message that if you aren't a nuclear superpower, your sovereignty is negotiable.
I understand why it feels unfair. I do. But we are debating geopolitics, not fairness. The Polish exclusion is a perfect example of the difference between soft power and hard power. Yes, Europe wrote checks, but Europe essentially outsourced its strategic brain and its muscle to Washington for 80 years. You can't just buy a seat at the table. You have to be able to hold the table. If Poland and Germany want a decisive say in the outcome, they need military capability that actually matches their economic output.
So the lesson is, get nukes or get quiet. That is a recipe for proliferation, not stability.
The lesson is, be capable.
Look at the Middle East right now. President Trump announced a second aircraft carrier is deploying to the region amid tensions with Iran. That is hard power. That deters escalation in a way that a conference in Geneva never ever will. The U.S. is signaling that it will act. And frankly, the drift described by Politico between the U.S. and Europe is simply the U.S. refusing to carry the baggage of allies who won't carry themselves.
But this unilateralism creates a chaotic information environment where trust just evaporates. When you don't have a coalition, you have competing narratives with no arbiter. I mean, look at the narrative war happening right now. You have Moscow, specifically Maria Zakharova, claiming that the Western allegations about Navalny's death being caused by a rare neurotoxin are just a distraction to bury the fallout from the Epstein files.
Which is standard information warfare. That happens regardless of the UN's standing.
But it works better when there's no trusted international consensus. It muddies the waters because there's no rule of law to point to. When rules disappear, truth becomes whatever the loudest superpower says it is. And this doesn't just affect Europe. This every nation for itself mentality is disastrous for the global South. Guterres was at the African Union for a reason.
To ask for money?
To point out that the financial architecture is rigged. There is a $4 trillion financing gap for developing nations. Africa needs a Security Council seat. You cannot run a planet of 8 billion people when the decision-making architecture is decided by 5 nations who won a war 80 years ago. If we don't reform these institutions to include the global South, they will simply walk away.
I agree they'll walk away, but I disagree on where they are walking to. You are waiting for the UN to vote on a new Security Council. I am telling you the reform is already happening, but it's economic, not bureaucratic. Look at the news this week regarding India and Alibaba.
The export partnership?
Exactly. I mean, think about the geopolitics there. India has banned Chinese tech apps. They have soldiers engaging in hand-to-hand combat on the border with China. The political tension is sky high, and yet India just signed a partnership with Alibaba.com to boost Indian exports. Why? Because trade trumps political posturing. This is the new order. It's transactional. It's pragmatic. It's India acting in its own interest to access 50 million buyers regardless of what the blocs say. That does more for development than a seat on a paralyzed Security Council ever could.
You call it pragmatic. I call it cynical. And more importantly, I don't buy that trade alone solves the equity problem. Trade is not enough when basic rights are being ignored. You mentioned the transactional nature of this new world. Who pays the price for those transactions? Look at the report from the AU summit. 6 million refugees and displaced people. Look at Sudan. The UN is accusing the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, of war crimes in al-Fashir. We're talking about mass killings and sexual violence used as a weapon of war.
And the current system is stopping that?
The current system is at least documenting it and providing a framework for eventual justice. Your Realpolitik world just shrugs and cuts a deal with the warlord because he controls the gold mines. Or look at El Salvador. We're seeing reports of irregularities in their mass trials under the state of exception. When you strip away human rights frameworks in favor of efficiency and national sovereignty, you end up with mass incarceration and unchecked violence. A world run solely on business deals leaves the marginalized with absolutely no recourse.
But are the current institutions providing recourse? They're providing reports. They're providing condemnation. They aren't stopping the violence. I'd argue that economic integration, like what India's doing, provides a pathway to stability that moralizing hasn't achieved. When nations are trading, the cost of war goes up. That is the only peace treaty that actually holds.
If that were true, we wouldn't have a war in Europe right now. Russia and Europe were deeply integrated economically. It didn't stop the tanks. But I want to pivot, because if you think the breakdown of order is terrifying on a map of the continent, look at what's happening where there are no borders at all. The Wild West isn't just a metaphor anymore. It's the reality in low Earth orbit and in the digital sphere. This is the ungoverned frontier.
It's not ungoverned. It's being pioneered. And frankly, this is where the private sector is proving its superiority over the state. We have the SpaceX Crew 12 mission docking at the ISS. We have VAST building a commercial station. This isn't just exploration, it's an economy. And on the ground, we have the integration of AI into defense. The Pentagon is negotiating with Anthropic regarding the use of Claude. That isn't anarchy. That is the U.S. leveraging innovation to maintain a technological edge.
You are glossing over the most dangerous part of that dynamic. You say negotiating, but the power dynamic has shifted. We have Anthropic fighting the Pentagon, fighting their own client to prevent their AI from being used for mass surveillance or autonomous weapons.
Which shows that the company has principles.
No, it shows that the company has sovereignty. We are entering an era of corporate feudalism. When a tech CEO can tell the United States military what it can and cannot do with software, that CEO is a non-state actor with superpower capabilities. And not all of them are benevolent. Look at what happened with Grok this week. The UK government is rushing to pass laws because that AI chatbot was generating sexualized deepfakes. You have a private company releasing a tool that violates the most basic rights of individuals, and governments are playing catch-up.
That's just regulation lagging innovation. It happens in every industrial revolution. The steam engine didn't have safety inspections on day one.
It's worse than that. We're reading reports that safety is dead at XAI. That isn't a lag. That is a choice. If the adults in the room are tech CEOs who are actively deprioritizing safety just to beat China or capture market share, we are in serious trouble. And it's not just abstract AI fears. Look at the data breach at Orbital in the Netherlands, 6.2 million customers. Or Tenga, we are outsourcing global security and our personal identities to corporations that are proving repeatedly that they cannot be trusted.
I see the risk, but I also see the necessity. The alternative to U.S. companies leading in AI isn't some global regulator, it's Chinese companies leading in AI. And speaking of China, we have to talk about the intelligence war. The CIA released a recruitment video targeting Chinese officers. That is aggressive, smart statecraft. It's using the tools of the information age to penetrate a rival. That is how you maintain stability, by knowing what your adversary is doing.
Or it's fueling paranoia and destabilization. China is vowing countermeasures. This tit-for-tat in the shadows creates a spiral of mistrust. It turns the internet into a battlefield. But I want to challenge your core assumption that markets prefer national policies and that this is all just some high-level game of chess. I think you're underestimating the people. The people are pushing back against this top-down, cold-blooded realpolitik.
How so?
Look at Munich again. Outside the security conference where the elites were drinking champagne and declaring the old order dead, there was a rally of 250,000 people demanding change in Iran. That's not a government, that's the street. Look at the US, the so-called YOLO Republicans defying their own party leadership. Look at Hungary. Orban is facing a real challenge from Peter Magyar, who's now polling ahead of him. The people want values. They want democracy. They don't just want bilateral trade deals and stability at the cost of their freedom.
I acknowledge the unrest, but I would frame it as a stress test that proves the resilience of the nation-state. You mentioned protests. I look at the Rio Carnival in Brazil. 6 million people are celebrating right now. That is cultural resilience. Or look at Bangladesh. After the uprising, after the violence, they held an election. The BNP won a majority. The system reset itself. Societies are resilient. They will self-correct without needing some global nanny state or a UN resolution to tell them how to vote.
But self-correction came at a cost of lives in Bangladesh. And in Brazil, while they celebrate Carnival, let's not forget the reality under the surface. The police just had to break up a massive Chinese-linked money laundering ring. $190 million funneled through the PCC.
For our listeners, that's the Primero Comando de Capital, the massive crime syndicate there.
Right. And this ring was moving money through crypto, exploiting the gaps between Chinese and Brazilian banking systems. That is what global anarchy looks like. Transnational crime rings exploiting the lack of international cooperation. You can't fight a global money laundering ring with national sovereignty alone. You need international cooperation. You need rules that cross borders.
And Brazil dismantled it. That proves my point. Brazilian authorities took action. They didn't wait for a global treaty. They enforced their laws. Strong nations enforce laws. Weak international bodies write reports about laws. That is the fundamental difference in our worldviews.
It's a compelling argument until you realize that for every ring they dismantle, 5 more spring up. because the systemic loopholes, the lack of global regulation on crypto, the lack of transparency in banking remain wide open. We are playing whack-a-mole with the mafia while you celebrate the hammer.
We are moving toward the conclusion, and I want to summarize where I think we stand. We're in a volatile transition, yes, but the funeral for the rules-based order that Chancellor Merz is attending is actually a birth. We are moving toward a multipolar world where nations, from India to Brazil to the U.S., act on clear interests. India trades with who it wants. The U.S. deploys carriers where it needs to. This clarity, this balance of power, will eventually create a more stable, honest equilibrium than the performative, rules-based order we've been pretending to follow for decades.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. An equilibrium built on power alone is just a pause between conflicts. Without robust international law, without institutions that include the global south and regulate unchecked tech and capital, we face a future of might makes right. We're looking at ecological collapse, ignored humanitarian crises like Sudan, and a tech sector that considers safety an afterthought. You call it a birth. I call it a return to the jungle. And in the jungle, everyone sleeps with one eye open.
Exactly. And that's why we're finally awake. Whether you view this as a catastrophe or a correction, one thing is undeniable. The safety nets of the 20th century are gone. You cannot rely on them anymore.
On that, sadly, we agree. The reality has changed. I would invite our listeners to look deeper into the materials regarding the AU summit and the exclusion of Poland from the Geneva talks. It tells you everything you need to know about who holds the cards in this new world.
And look at the market data and the strategic moves in the orbital economy. That tells you where the future is being built. Thank you for joining the debate.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.